that I added to the email. Oh, yeah, we're being recorded. So all those acronyms, the WWPF, the WAB, CPAW, WIN, and maybe even some more acronyms that she can throw in there as well. So I'll turn it over to Allison Lehman of La Plata County. Thanks for being with us.
Okay. Sorry, I think I haven't done this before, but I was trying to share. I have a lot of everything pulled up and depending on what questions we get. And so first, Ashley, congratulations. I definitely agree. You do so much, and for what we do at the county, we couldn't do it without you. So thank you. And for anyone who missed at the beginning, Alex had just said, if you have questions, throw your hand up in the chat. I will be covering a lot of information. So my plan is to get through my 4 slides, not a lot of slides, just a lot of detail. And then once I've gone through that, I think we'll see what type of questions we have and determine if we have time now or if we want to transition to talking about the community wildfire protection plan. I am always available to talk to you about your projects, your interests, and what's going on in the county. So even outside of this presentation, please feel free to reach me. And the first slide here, I'm just going to explain a little bit of background on the county's involvement with wildfire. I don't know how much everybody knows, but La Plata County didn't have any kind of a active stance. They didn't have a position. They weren't really involved outside of what was a 2006 community wildfire protection plan. And so a lot has started to happen, which is a good thing for all of you, because we're getting to the point where the county is figuring out how to do more, how to assist all these efforts going on. The first effort started in 2020. There was a grant the county received called Community Planning Assistance for Wildfire. That was Alex's first acronym, CPAW. And that process took a full year, where a committee of specialists, planners, wildfire specialists, mapping specialists, someone who works at the fire science lab in Missoula, all contributed to the process of kind of reviewing what's going on in La Plata County, what's missing, what's working and not working, doing wildfire hazard risk mapping, and then leaving us with a final presentation and report that resulted in 3 recommendations. And that's what you see in front of you here. And as an added note, when I was saying previously the county hasn't really been active, all of these things the county is working on now or has followed through with, which is exciting to say. We are starting to make a lot of progress. The adoption of the wildfire hazard maps occurred at the time that the CPAW report was released, so back in 2020. The Wildfire Advisory Board is now an active board that reports to the Board of County Commissioners. It's made up of 7 members of the public, like yourself, who contribute their time monthly to committees as well as to the advisory board to review matters wildfire related to the county and then make recommendations. There's a very big initiative coming out of that you will see in, fingers crossed, I'm not going to overpromise, but fingers crossed that in this year, in 2023, you'll see the launch of a new website that will support all wildfire related things in the county. So it'll be a way for people who are new to the county and aren't familiar to Wildfire Adaptive Partnership to learn about how to sign up for assessments and what's involved with chipper program and things like that. It'll be a way for people to know where prescribed fire is occurring, who their fire protection district is, and the list just goes on. It's going to be an amazing resource for people. And then the third recommendation, adopting wildland urban interface code to reduce wildfire loss. This is something still in the works. Part of the explanation is that the state is actually looking at adopting a statewide code. The kind of beginning progress of that is in the legislature right now, and so some of our decision making is dependent on that. But those were the recommendations that came out of that report, and it sort of created this energy that led into our next acronym. And give me a moment while I figure out how to the WWPF. This is the Wildfire and Watershed Protection Fund coordinator. The C isn't in there, but WWPF is a newly created position. That position was created through an intergovernmental relationship between City of Durango, Durango Fire Protection District, and La Plata County. That's the LPC in 2021. With that intergovernment agreement, they created a position, and that position is just called the WWPF coordinator. In April of 2020, I started as the WWPF. So in just a short time, I haven't even been in the position for a full year yet. We've created a lot of collaborations and initiatives that hopefully will kind of I'd say my goal is to show that we can do these kind of larger scale projects in the county, and that we can show a model for how we want to continue to get mitigation done and planning done for wildfire in our county. There are 4 grants that I'm presently working on, and they're not all within the county, but 3 of them are. So I'm going to summarize the grants and then get into the CWPP, which is kind of a 5th grant that we're working on. The first grant, getting to our next acronym, is Watershed Infrastructure Improvement for the Nation. This grant, we are working directly with Wildfire Adaptive Partnership as well as Durango Fire. And so Alex and Ashley and I have spent a lot of time planning and kind of figuring out how to make this project successful. The project area is roughly from above Lemon Reservoir along County Road 240, then intersecting into County Road 243, intersecting into County Road 240, and along 240 to roughly the city boundary. And it extends south a little bit more, capturing some of the Florida watershed, which is a big focal area of this grant. The water infrastructure improvement, the name would suggest focus on water, and the Florida was selected for this grant in order to start monitoring and create a baseline. And the idea is that we want to know when a wildfire occurs in the area, what the water quality needs to be returned to, what needs to be amended and changed in order to continue to keep that healthy drinking water that provides for all the city of Durango, for the residents, the visitors, and for business. So as part of that grant, in addition to doing the monitoring, wildfire mitigation is a huge component. So restoring the forest floor and the forest health, and in doing so, all kind of working together towards healthy land management practices. The grant can provide up to 50% in reimbursement for landowners. So that's a really exciting project that is getting off the ground right now. It is possible to sign up, and that first step is getting a home wildfire risk assessment. because of snow on the ground, you're probably not going to get that assessment right away. So if you're interested in signing up, we can direct you to the website. And then what we'll do is schedule, once we see that the conditions are good, to evaluate the fuels that you have on your parcel. And then the county has completed and is working on 2 grants that are called workforce grants. And I'm sorry, I should give credit for the WIN project very quickly. The Environmental Protection Agency, the federal agency, initiated the WIN grant. The funds are going through the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So those are our funders for this great project. And the workforce grant funding is coming through the Department of Natural Resources for Colorado. The program is another acronym. I think it also appeared on Alex's list, CWPP, which stands for the Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Plan. And La Plata County was fortunate to receive 3 grants through CWPP. The workforce grants don't involve any funding coming into the county directly. They go to the crews. And one crew completed work in a county-owned parcel that's within Edgemont. That was the first project. A second project is something that you may have seen an article on the paper, and there'll be a lot more press coming out in 2023 as we get the crews back into the county. They are completing roadside mitigation on county roads. And so depending on what routes you take to take your kids to school or to do your errands, you may see crews who are doing mitigation. And that's something we're really excited to help and create safer routes if we do need to evacuate in a fire event in the county. And then a third grant, also through CWPP, is a grant that will set up a match very similar to WIN, where private landowners and HOAs will receive funding to complete wildfire mitigation. And this grant is targeting the County Road 240 corridor to city limits of Durango. And that particular grant is not started yet. And so I don't have a website to direct people to, but in the coming months, watch for more information on that. And we look forward to getting people signed up and involved. And finally, that takes us to the CWPP. I'm doing an introduction. Ashley really is taking the charge on this. She's the one who applied for the grant for the funding so we could do this really desperately needed revision. So huge props to Ashley for that. And part of the reason it's so important, I don't know if anyone's been involved with the process of a CWPP. It can take a lot of time. There's a lot to consider. The document is supposed to be something that's used for 5 years, revisited frequently over the course of those 5 years. And then after those 5 years, it should go through another revision. In the case of the La Plata County CWPP, the last version, or the original version, is from 2006. And so it's time that we kind of go back to the drawing board and really consider what are the needs that are going on in our community, be it of the landowners, the utilities, the tribes, our residents. What all should we kind of put in as values and things that we all want to work towards? The plan helps us create those strategies. And then great thing about having them written down is that you can revisit them. You can review your progress and then evaluate where you need to focus next, or kind of figure out your barriers and move on from there. It also establishes a level of accountability, and you'll see that when Ashley does her presentation, that there are specific partners that are identified in the plan who will be responsible for certain aspects of our goals. So that helps a lot with just making sure that it's not a document that sits on the shelf. We want to be able to keep that utility. And then finally, the funding component is huge. For instance, the grant that was released last year, we were not eligible to apply for just because our plan was so outdated. And so having the CWPP is a way that you can get moved onto some lists for available funding. And that's the conclusion of my presentation today. I'm going to stop sharing, but if people want me to show websites or anything, I just can't see hands while I'm sharing.
Yeah, we also have a little bit of time built in at the end for questions if more arise as we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so if there aren't any immediate, thank you so much, Allison, for all the updates there. Really appreciate that. And that's kind of a perfect segue into Ashley's presentation, continuing the conversation on the countywide CWPP, Community Wildfire Protection Plan. So without further ado, I think, Ashley, I will hand it off to you.
Great, thanks. I'm just trying to find the right screen to share.
You may need to go out.
It's not coming up.
Love it. I'm sure. I would love you to be a part.
Do you have those slides available, Alex? It's not like coming up for me. I think it's because I'm recording, so it's a little different. Not even showing it to me as an option. Great, thanks. We'll go back just a little bit here. And so is
Is that
starting?
the right place to start?
No, it's starting at the priority area.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. It's not a Zoom for us if we don't have some technical difficulty. So, okay.
There you go.
Great, thank you. So as Allison mentioned, we knew that a La Plata County CWPP update was needed because it's older than 5 years. CSFS prefers 5 years. 10 years is definitely the maximum, and we are at from what, 17 years now going on. So it's been a long time for the county. And so one of the things that I looked into was trying to find some funding for Wildfire Adapted to help kind of manage these updates, because within our county, I believe there's about 20 out of the 25 that might need to be updated at this point. So the county was the first one, but then we really want to work with some of our communities to get their plans updated as well, so that everyone has plans that are up to date with good plans to implementation plans, I should say, but also make them eligible for funding. As Allison touched on, the Community Wildfire Defense Grants is a $1 billion worth of funding out of the infrastructure funds that come through the U.S. Forest Service. So we want to be able to tap into that funding, and also at the state level for firmworm grants in the future. Having a good CWPP up to date is where we want to be. So go ahead, Alex, to the next one. So one of the things with an update, so we're not doing a brand new CWPP. We are updating it, and there are specific minimum guidance that we have from the State Forest Service that we need to address. One is to talk about all the work that's been done since the last CWPP, which is a lot for this county, and for that we kind of summarized our initiatives. So there's a lot of new stuff. Allison touched on the stuff for the county, but there's also regional efforts going on, collaborative groups. So we wanted to make sure we touched on all of that, of what is new since 2006 within La Plata County. And the other one is to come up with priority areas or areas of concern. And this, we first, I should say that all the stuff in here we've compiled, but we also had a meeting with partners in early December, and that's where we got feedback on goals and strategy specifics that we needed to try to digest and put into a draft that we will share with them at the end of this month as well, with input from you guys today as well. So what we needed to do is come up with areas of concern, and this is hard because if we don't want to say that the work won't happen without these areas, but it is required to get it approved, that we do have some priority areas where work is already happening, where there's a lot of room for a lot of momentum going already, that there's a high risk, and we can show that. So what we decided to bring together would be the CPA wildfire hazard map. So that's what came out of our 2020 plan. And as you can see, the real red areas, there's not a lot of area that doesn't have wildfire risk in this county. Everything does, and we want to show that. But we can see that the 550 corridor and then the southern part of the county definitely has the highest wildfire risk. And the next thing we did is overlay that with prioritization of potential operational delineations or pods that the U.S. Forest Service came up with. And this is a way for them to break down the forest into operation areas that they can attack or let burn, or they know the risk of what is happening in each of these areas. So part of the effort through RMRI 2 years ago was to prioritize these pods through their 4 values. And the one that we're really focused on is community. So they wanted to focus on that broadened stakeholder input on which pods had the most community benefit and needed to be the highest priority. So if you go to the next one, Alex, here's a show to show the pods. We do want to just prioritize these for communities within La Plata County. And for the pods, I didn't have that slide yet, but you can see Columbine. So it's broken up by districts in the Forest Service. So Columbine 1, Alex, can you point out where that is right there in the middle? Durango. And then 42 and 40, those are kind of the priority ones for the county. And so laying those kind of priority pods over the map, we can come up with kind of some priority areas that we have. Next slide, please. And so I don't know if we can zoom in at all, Alex, but as you can see, it kind of fits in with where some of the work's already being done. I guess not. So that yellow blob there is really the Florida watershed where wind's happening and some co-swap funding. Orange is the city of Durango, where we already have a lot of work, cross-boundary work on city parks with partners like BLM and I'm trying to think, there's a whole bunch of partners in the Fire Adapted Durango Partnership effort. And then on the east side it's really hard to see, but you can see there's Forest Lakes and Vallecito. And on the west side, we have Rafter J and Durango West, that whole kind of 160 corridor. So we're lining those up a lot with the highways. And so these are the priority areas that we wanted to identify, not discounting anyone who lives outside of those, and that this will still apply, these goals and strategies will still apply, but we had to come up with some way of showing where our highest areas of concern are for the next 5 years. And we expect that we'll be updating every 5 years, and maybe a lot of work gets done and new areas come to the top to address in our next iteration. Next slide. So one of the things that we came up with at this meta meeting, which is what we call the large stakeholder meeting for La Plata County, was that we wanted to come up with a vision statement for the county. So the vision for the CWPP is to improve countywide preparedness for wildfire by increasing the pace and scale of mitigation efforts, increasing cross-boundary projects, and increasing wildfire mitigation, education, ultimately creating a fire-adapted community where residents can live safely with wildfire. So this really flows throughout all of our goals. We wanted to increase pace and scale because we know we have an issue, and doing small projects is probably not going to have as big of an impact if we plan and come together and do cross-boundary projects where we can do public and private together. And also we realize the need to increase education, and especially education and outreach to those who might be visiting our county, tourists who come in who may not understand that there's wildfire risk, or new people moving to the area that might not understand what it means to live in a fire adapted ecosystem. Next one. And so out of the first from 2006, we had 5 goals. And in this next iteration, we took, I guess it was probably 3, and combined them into goal A, which really probably encompasses a lot of all the work that you guys do within your community. So reducing wildfire risk in the wildland-urban interface by reducing structure ignitability, increasing the number of fuels reduction projects on private and public land. We really wanted to stress that it's not just going to work if we only treat private land. We need to try to coordinate and make sure that we're treating on both sides of the fence. Goal B, I think, is another one that is important for you guys as ambassadors, is to increase public involvement in wildfire prevention and education. The next one was to promote healthy watersheds, forest and range ecosystems, along with wildland fire mitigation. So this is looking at more as those areas maybe where it's not so much WUI. So in the forest, we still need to do forest health projects. We need to make sure that we're protecting whole watersheds and understand that the trees in the forest we have play an integral part into our overall forest health and what we love about living in La Plata County. We want to increase wildfire preparedness and response efforts. And this was the big one that came out of our discussion with partners, was to increase capacity building to address workforce development and biomass utilization, because we know there's a lot coming off the forest. We want to be able to help those businesses and others to be able to process that biomass. And in November, we went and saw Timber Age System. We did a visit of theirs, but they're just one of the kind of businesses that could use biomass and be able to utilize a lot of that slash that comes off of projects, especially big forestry projects. And the other one is workforce development. I think we know that we want to support all the contractors, mitigation contractors out there, but we know that sometimes they're booked up by June for the year. So we want to be able to increase development of that business within our county. So before we get into specific strategies, I wanted to see if there were any questions at this point, and also give you guys just a couple minutes to think about if you have specific strategies that you could see that could be under these goals. And we'll go through what the partners came up with. And so if you guys have any that are outside of that, please feel free at the end, and we'll incorporate all of those as we work through our next draft of this update. Any questions at this point? I can't see everybody, but that could be questions about the priorities or these first goals. Okay, not seeing any. If you do, please put them in the chat, and Alex, help me to monitor that. If you see anything come up, feel free to interrupt me. Okay, moving on to breaking down for each goal. Now we go into strategy. So I apologize that these are super text heavy. There was no other way I could pull this in here, but I'll go through them quickly and just give you an overview. And in the plan, we actually have partners that are responsible under each strategy, and this will help with the accountability that Allison mentioned. And this was kind of came out of Bill, the example from Archuleta County, the way that one was presented of coming up with these strategies and goals, and also holding people accountable. Who's going to have the programs already in place to help do these. And it's also a way to easily identify within this document those that we can try to go after funding for. So if you're saying you are a responsible party in the CWPP, then hopefully that will help request for funding down the line. So for the first one of reducing wildfire risk in the WUI, which we know is going to be our biggest goal, advancing of building code, this is something that the Wildfire Advisory Board is trying to look into, and there's also state discussions, but coming up with minimum codes for building requirements in the WUI will help protect those homes. And also the Wildfire Advisory Board, or the WAB, is to create a centralized map for mitigation treatments, risk, and the WUI. And this is also being accomplished through all our collaborative groups. So the Four Rivers Collaborative, the Meta Group, they're trying to track all the treatments, but also just being able to track priority areas and treatments going on to help get our private projects in working across boundary. An example of this, I think, is in Forest Lakes Grassy Mountain area, that they have worked with BLM, Forest Service, CSFS, and then also the private subdivision. Next is to promote and expand mitigation incentive programs for private landowners. So this is a lot of defensible space cost share, chipper rebates, larger community projects, and hopefully this will help to get funding to continue our programs, but also the WIN geography and COSWAP. Those are all funds that are coming in to do the same kind of incentive programs that we're already working on. Next one was to increase opportunities for slash removal. And so this would be air curtain burners, or the slash depot up at Vallecito, the work that goes on as a community hub for slash removal, chipper rebates through wildfire adapted, pile burning, and when it's available in communities. And this is ultimately to create decrease slash that ends up in landfill or sits on someone's property for a long time and is a risk. And then increased planning and execution for cross-boundary treatments throughout the whole county, and especially in priority areas, which are mentioned there. Alex, I think the bottom of your screen might be covering that last line, but those are the kind of areas where we already have the watershed, the city of Durango. It's okay. And then the Forest Lakes area. Okay, you can go to the next one, thanks. And so a few more strategies for this first one, to create the promote utilization of a centralized resource center. This is something else the Wildfire Advisory Board is hoping to look at. That would be a place for all residents to go in and see resources, but also track mitigation that they may be doing on their property. And explore locally generated long-term non-grant funding sources. So this is something specific to the county. There's been a lot of counties that have been able to come up with a additional tax or put it into ways that ultimately, the biggest one I know of is Boulder County actually just passed one, and they have, I think it's now $10 million a year for mitigation within their county, and that all happened after the Marshall Fire last year, and that was just happened I think in November. So it's a way that they've been able to sustainably long-term realize that there's a risk and come up with an answer for that. And then for the structured ignitability, increase wildfire risk site assessments in private residences communities. And then update local neighborhood subdivisions level CWPP. So these are the ones that are older. We want to focus on, this is a larger one for the county. We have large ideas. They're very top level, looking that 30,000 foot view, but then we want to be able to help subdivision levels with CWPPs or community assessments that are specific to that community that we worked with a lot of you guys with on the past. Next one. So the next one is kind of that increased involvement in wildfire prevention and education. So we want to promote targeted learning opportunities and trainings for residents. This is stuff we've done in the past. Also, I know Durango Fire had some opportunities last year for learning opportunities for homeowners. And then we also want to try to develop demonstration sites and experiential, it's not the right word, we need to look at that one, but more of like ways that people can experience. That one came from, being able to take a hike and see what happened during the 416 fire and what's going on. So a lot of those interactive ways for people to learn about wildfire risk and what they can do, but also understand that we live in a fire adapted ecosystem. And then we want to create an overarching communication plan around that theme of living with wildfire. We know we have a threat, we need to learn to live safely with it. Build the capacity of our neighborhood ambassador program. So continue to utilize all of you guys and your hard work that you guys do within your communities and all the other volunteers we have throughout the county. Increase education and social license of prescribed fire and mechanical treatment. So this is just understanding the type of work that needs to be done on the land and to have the buy-in and education, like you guys know that this needs to happen, that we need to mimic fire if we don't have it on the ground. So being able to get that out to a larger audience as well. And then promote education opportunities geared K through college, living with wildfire, and hopefully that goes into increased workforce development, people who want to become foresters or get into mitigation activities. And then outreach, specifically your tourists, as I mentioned, and that may use the local accommodation, including short-term rental properties. So this is people just to understand that there is a risk of wildfire, and maybe there's information we can give to them that if something happens, how do you evacuate? How do you sign up for Code Red if you're here visiting, so that they are aware if that situation would occur. Next slide. So the watershed. So this one is again to increase prescribed fire on the landscape and limit practitioners' liability. We want to see more fire on the ground, and we know that in New Mexico, we saw what can happen if that gets out of control, but we need to be able to use that as a resource because it's going to be our most economical way of treating large forested areas. So this is more of the beyond the WUI, so looking at forest health in general. And then promote strategies and utilization of resources, data sharing, and overall coordination from our landscape scale initiative. So this is RMRI, the Southwest Colorado CFLRP, which is, oh my gosh, I'm just drawing a blank, Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program. So that's money that's coming currently through the U.S. Forest Service, but it really draws on looking at cross-boundary work. The Four Rivers Collaborative and also the WWPF. And then plan next treatments directly tied into watersheds, forest health, and wildfire habitat and recreation. So this is not just for fuels reduction, but to increase habitat and recreation opportunities. And then provide ongoing support for additional intergovernment agreements like the WWPF as additional means to treat acres on the ground. So looking at those large collaborative efforts that we've already seen in agreements through city, county, and fire protection districts. Next slide. And so increasing wildfire preparedness and response. So this is really geared, a lot of this responsible parties would be the fire protection districts, but identify, promote, and strengthen evacuation routes on county roads and highways, and then promote community level preparedness evacuation drills and community level safe egress routes. So that might be money for doing roadside thinning projects that a lot of you have. We have a lot of communities that are one way in, one way out. They need to be able to have clear and easy ways to exit. Identifying vulnerable populations and targeted outreach for additional needs related to evacuation. So single car homes, elderly, and large animal evacuation, which is something people don't always think about. And then increase participation in Code Red, the emergency notification system. And the last goal. So increase capacity and the workforce development and biomass. So this is to support and advertise the existence of private contractors who are able to complete fuels reduction projects. And that is the CSFS mitigation contractor list that we share on our website, and we hand out to people who are interested. And then promote and utilize and promote local biomass alternatives for mitigation projects. So this and also provide support for those businesses getting off the ground, that we can help expand this growth of that kind of business within Southwest Colorado. And then do some additional target and outreach college and vocational tech students to increase that workforce development. So this might be programs through the Southwest Conservation Corps to get more people interested in this kind of work, so that we have more resources going forward as additional funding comes into the area. So those were all our goals and strategies, and that was a lot. And I think I just have one slide left, and then we can go to some questions for the last 10 minutes. So all of those goals and strategies, that's the meat of the CWPP. So everyone's coming together, communally saying, these are our areas. We know the risk is everywhere. We're going to focus on trying to increase education, reduce risk in the WUI, work on forest health. And we want to do it through this means, and also have people who are in the CWPP accountable for those actions, stuff that they're already doing, or the ways that they're identified as partners that can help in that area, and hopefully that will lead to more funding down the line. So we are currently working on finalizing our draft, and we're going to share it with partners for edits and additions and other feedback. And then we have another large stakeholder group on our meeting on January 26th. And then we will, Allison and I will meet with any other partners who we may not have been able to reach through those meetings individually. Then we'll finalize the draft, and we're going to present to the county commissioners. They will have the ultimate say in finalizing this document. But after everyone comes together and agrees and feels that they can move forward with this document, then we have to circulate for signatures and hope to have it finalized by mid-April. So right now, I've heard kind of the next round of CWDG grants, which is the federal one, might be late spring. So that could be good timing. You have to have that CWPP less than 10 years old to apply. So hopefully that brings in some additional funding that way. And one other thing I'll mention is that in the appendix of this, we will have listed all the other CWPPs within the county. So any community that already has a CWPP, and we'll have the year it was finished. So we already have it as a goal of trying to get those updated, and we will continue with that moving forward. But we want to be able to address those that are part of building into this larger community level CW or county level one as well. So I think that was all. So we can probably stop sharing and see if there are some questions now. Sorry, thanks for listening to me. That was a lot of information. Hopefully it made a little bit of sense, but did anybody have any questions or thoughts on something that might be missing, or questions about how this will affect your community and how you guys can go after grant funding, anything like that?
Ashley, this is Gary Carter from Los Ranchitos. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Our plan is just over 10 years old. So if we want to initiate the update, who do we contact to get that rolling?
So that's a great question, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have similar questions. So the funding that we got through coalitions and collaboratives was for us to work on this county level CWPP, but also us to work with communities to try to get their CWPPs updated. So if that is something that you want to see, and we do need commitment from ambassadors to help us get this information together. We need you guys to have input. So if you guys are willing to do that, and work with us, then we can help try to coordinate among, with all the partners, Gary. So if that's something you're interested in, please reach out to Alex and let him know, and we can try to make sure we move forward with your community.
I am so reaching out.
Okay. Sounds
Thank you.
great. Donna.
I'm sorry, and I was just saying, yes, I will be reaching out to Alex as well, because ours needs to be updated this year as well. I saw it on the site when I renewed our application this year.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
we'll be in
that-
touch, Alex, because I definitely need help. So thank you.
I figured that it's
Glad
quite-
you guys are here for us.
Yeah, from Firewise USA, is that what you're talking about, Donna? That you needed the updated plan for that, or just in general?
Yeah, for Firewise USA, we do the renewal application every year. I thought that was you guys, but I guess not, huh?
Firewise USA is through the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. Is that right?
Mhm.
Another acronym. How many do it tonight? So yeah, that's a national recognition, and you do need an updated plan. So yeah, and
Right, and it's old, and we've completed a lot of the items on it. So, we obviously need a new plan, come up with more things to do.
yeah, and that's really
So
what
I'll reach
it's for.
out.
So circling back on what you've done and what you want to do next. So that's great.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as
I'll be in touch, Alex.
Got questions, if you have feedback, feel free to share that as well. Roger.
Yes, Roger Steeper from Edgemont Highlands. I have a question about your list of fire mitigation contractors, which is a huge list. And I wonder if there's been any attempt to vet any of these contractors as to their abilities and various activities they're able to do, or to get feedback from people that have used each contractor so that we can better choose which one to pick when we're trying to pick a mitigation company.
That is a huge list. And Mark, I'm not entirely sure what it takes. Do they just fill out an application with you guys to get on that list?
Yes, that's the contractors come to us, unfortunately. Since we're a state agency anyway, we can't make any recommendations. So of course we put our standard caveat with anybody on that list is that we don't vet them for insurance or references and that sort of thing. So we urge anybody that's going to call those contractors to do so and do their due diligence. So
Yeah, and that list does break down what type of service they do. So it does say if they have like mastication equipment, other things like that. So it is on there. And I will say that as the nonprofit, we don't endorse any of our contractors, but we do share that list. And a lot of them in the past have come to our meetings, and that's what we encourage if they want to do that and come to a fire council meeting and present themselves. But yeah, I think it's a little hard for us. We can't make recommendations, but it is a long list, and I appreciate that.
But could you get reviews on your list from people that have used these companies? Is there a way to get a reviews section for those contractors?
for us not. All we can provide is just that list. We tried, and the most we can do is just keep it updated. I know there's a couple of folks that have gone or not in business anymore. So we try to keep that updated, but there's probably a few folks on there that you won't get a call back from them, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Allison, I'm not sure for when, are you guys still doing that if someone does the project and then they might be listed on the website? Are you guys doing that or no?
Yes.
Maybe explain that a little bit more of what you guys plan to do for when.
Okay. You could loosely call it an endorsement. The contractor that the homeowner selects, I mean, you is the landowner kind of asking the questions, how would you perform this work? What level of liability do you have? Just to make sure that you feel like they're credible, that they have a good experienced crew. And in the WIN program, that's the water improvement, water infrastructure improvement, sorry, for the nation act. if someone has work completed, that work has to be completed to a scope of work that's defined by the program. And so there are standards that are pretty much reflective of everything that's in the Colorado State Forest Service home ignition zone guidelines. If you're not familiar with those, you can find those on our website or on the Colorado State Forest Service website. Once the work's performed, an inspection is completed by the same person who completed the assessment and prepared that scope of work. If there's anything the contractor missed, that needs to be completed before the reimbursement is a possibility. And so the contractors who are going through that process, they'll learn a lot about the right way to do mitigation and the best ways to complete the work for the home ignition zone standards. And so what we've kind of offered contractors is on the WIN website, there will be a link to, these are contractors who've gone through, who've completed the process, I guess is the best way to say it, meaning that the homeowner was able to get their reimbursement. So it's not necessarily reflective of their work that we graded it, but we can confirm that the contractor met all the standards.
So I'm sure if you check back to the WIN website next summer, there will be some contractors listed on there in the future. Thanks, Allison. And as Bill mentioned, I think that confusion that Wildfire Adapted, Donna, is the liaison for Firewise USA, but it's not our program. So that might have been the confusion because do work with that locally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Charlie.
get it. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. So I just wanted to let you know, and because I have been fairly involved with CWDG here. But one of the things that we saw is, like, if for where I'm at now, the all of those community CWPPs were referenced in the county CWPP that is less than 10 years old. And so it actually allowed us to apply for projects that were in a CWPP that was, 15 years old or done as far back as like 2003. So definitely, I know that there's a lot of CWPPs that are over that 5-year, 10-year timeline, which makes it tough. But yeah, wrapping those into the new iteration was verified for all the ones that I saw as making it a valid project in a CWPP for CWDG funds. So just wanted to make sure that, and I'm not sure exactly how things are going on there. Mark might be able to speak to that, but it's a really great way to quickly make those projects eligible again while working on the rest of the updates for them.
Great, that's a great point. And I know in the past, for firmworm grants, for example, the state funding, we used to reference, does it fit under CWPP? And we'd always say, yes, La Plata, but now the emphasis is also coming from the state to get these updated. So this is a great first step for all of the communities because you can still apply for funding even while we try to help you get the local, your community level one updated as well. So that's a great point. Thank you, Charlie. Any other feedback? Overall, are you guys feeling pretty good about those goals and strategies? Was there anything huge missing? If you feel good, maybe give a thumbs up and let's see if people agree that you think this is going in the right direction, that partners came up with some good examples. Is that pretty good? It is a lot, and it's been a large undertaking, and I think we're getting close to trying to finalize some of these strategies and goals and have something that's really that can be implemented. And I think that's what we need. And I don't know if anyone saw the one from 2006, but I think it's only about 15 pages. Is that right, Allison? It's pretty short and sweet. So we're open to give some more specific examples where this can be used in the long run for the next 5 years, especially. All right. Anybody else? Looks like we're right at 6 o'clock, so we might be able to hold you to right to the time today, which would be great. All right. Anything else, Alex?
That's all I've got. Just thanks everybody for joining us today. And yeah, another congratulations to Ashley on the award. And yeah, please get in touch with me, to the folks who mentioned that. And let's see, yeah, if you want to, I guess, review further down the line, I think there's gonna be a little bit more public outreach that's gonna go on with the CWPP. Maybe another opportunity to send us an email if you have longer comments. That's all I got.
Yeah, I think one last thing, I just want to see, Bill, if you had any thoughts when you guys did the update for Archuleta County a couple years ago. Was it similar to this? Any thoughts you might have?
Yeah, it was kind of similar, and I think it's good too to get as specific as you can about your projects, because that could help down the line for eligibility on grants. And I did have one comment too on the, there's a lack of vetting for contractors. That's really none of our jobs to do that. But talk to your neighbors. Talk to people in your HOA, keep your eyes open as you're driving around. When you see somebody who's done work, keep track of you can ask them who did it. Besides all the questions that you should ask that Allison was mentioning about, do you have proper insurance, blah, 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 things like that. Those are just kind of standard doing your due diligence with any contractor. But I really look around, in my own head, I know in Archuleta County who's doing good work and who isn't, because I keep my eyes open whenever I'm driving by. And if I see fresh stumps out there, I know somebody's had work, and I'll ask them who did it. So that's one way you can find.
Great, thanks, Bill. Okay, if there's not any other questions, then we'll go ahead and wrap up today. But thanks everyone for your time. Really appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Have a good one. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks.